Commission Christian Radio presents Nicodemus, the Faithful Pharisee by Colm Flanagan. Episode 4, A Miracle and a Question.
The journey back to Jerusalem was uneventful, and the morning after I came home, I went to see Samuel, the Pharisee leader who had instigated my trip to the Galilee region.
Nicodemus, it's good to see you back. I was beginning to wonder if something had happened to you.
Oh, it's not been that long, really. I rather liked the place. As you know, it was my first journey to the Galilee. The lake, or sea as they call it, is a beautiful setting, and Capernaum is a pleasant town.
So, tell me about the Sabbath situation. Did you find a formula that satisfied them?
No, I'm afraid the divisions are deep and personal. I quickly found out that it wasn't so much a theoretical argument over doctrine, but it all came at root from the activities of a travelling preacher, a man called Jesus, who came from Nazareth.
Did you see anything of this Nazarene?
I did, but I had to be very circumspect. Feelings were running high, and I had to be seen as an honest broker by both sides. We had a private talk one night.
And?
Samuel, what do you think the Messiah will look like? Will he be a warrior? Will he be a kind of military man?
He will set our people free. But as to the means, I admit I've always thought that he would become a leader of a group. A large one, perhaps, who would drive the Romans out.
You see, this man, this Jesus, there was something about him which, to me, transcended that image. He had great power. I could feel it, but he was also gentle, a person who could be trusted, a man of faith.
Do you mean, if I understand you, Nicodemus, that this man from Galilee might be the one we're waiting for?
He challenged me, Samuel. I felt the presence of God.
This could be the start of something so big. I'd warn you, be cautious. We've been friends for many years, and I don't think you're easily led. I wouldn't have asked you to go to Galilee if I'd thought that. But this, well, I think we must wait and see. Look, I'll tell the others that you have tried to reconcile the factions in Capernaum synagogue, and no man could do more.
Thank you, Samuel.
And take some time for yourself and for Elizabeth as well. You've worked hard, I feel. And maybe you also have things of, shall we say, personal faith to settle. Now that may take time.
Samuel was right. For a while, it seemed to be working. But then, one evening, as I got home, I heard news which disturbed my mind once more.
I've had a letter from Zebedee, Nicodemus.
Oh yes, and how's everything in the Galilee?
He seems to be doing well, though he misses his sons.
Yes, hard help is all very well, but there's nothing to beat family business. At least so I've heard. There's quite a few in the Sanhedrin who've got sons understudying them, and it gives continuity. And fresh ideas too. That's not always comfortable when your mind has run along the same lines for years.
Well, speaking of being comfortable, there's some news you'll be interested in.
Oh yes.
The Galilean teacher is coming to Jerusalem this year for the Passover. I understand he's been here before, but quietly. Zebedee thinks there may be something different this time.
Oh, does he say why or what?
Well, apparently Jesus has close friends in Bethany, 2 women and their brother Lazarus. Recently, Lazarus has been sick, and John told his father that Jesus said he would come and visit him. That's all Zebedee knows.
And Bethany's not far from the city. I'm hearing other rumours going round the Sanhedrin that Caiaphas and Annas, his father-in-law, are dead set against this Jesus. I think they fear he'll do something to anger the Romans. Dangerous waters for anyone. Herod is vicious and unpredictable. He can't get over the fact that he's an Edomite, not really a proper Jew. I wonder if it might be a good idea to visit this family in Bethany and, well, just have a quiet word about Jesus before he arrives.
You still care about him, don't you, Nicodemus?
He's changed my whole way of thinking. He's a true prophet, of that I'm sure. Oh, he's much more to me now. I'd follow him tomorrow, if only...
I know. But ultimately, you must do what you believe is right. Go to Bethany, talk to the two sisters and Lazarus. It's the right thing to do.
So I did, and the next day found me in Bethany. It was about an hour's walk from my home, but as I approached the village, it was clear something was happening there. 2 men were approaching me, and I recognised one, Gamaliel, a member of the Sanhedrin. What had he been doing there? Gamaliel, what are you doing here?
Nicodemus, have you come to see Jesus from Nazareth, the fellow you investigated in Galilee?
Well, he's here then?
Here? I'll say he's here. The place is in an uproar.
Why? What's been happening? Has he done something?
Done something? Oh, let me introduce you to Joseph from Arimathea. He's a member of the Sanhedrin, but is often away on his business. Iron, copper and brass. Expensive items. Joseph, this is Nicodemus. I was telling you about his trip to Galilee a while ago to investigate this Jesus person.
Indeed. I'm pleased to meet you, Nicodemus. I too have been following this fellow Jesus' activities in Galilee and other parts also. I persuaded Gamaliel to come with me, as I'd heard that Jesus from Nazareth might be coming here, and I wanted to hear him preach. He is different.
Yes, indeed. But what we saw today is in a new category altogether. Apparently he knows some folk from Bethany, 2 ladies and their brother. Well, the brother took very ill a week or so ago. They sent word for Jesus to come and heal his friend. He didn't come, and the man died. Lazarus is his name.
I was slightly puzzled. Gamaliel had said is instead of was. But I put it down to him being a little overexcited. That's very sad.
Indeed. Jesus arrived too late, or so it seemed. He was very upset and started crying.
Then he asked to see the grave.
We walked to it. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, apparently. I overheard one of the ladies, I think she was called Martha, telling Jesus that, I think he must stink by now, she said.
Well, then Jesus shouted loudly to some of the surrounding mourners to roll away the stone. Well, they looked puzzled. Then the 2 sisters said, "Do what he said." So they did.
And this Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come forth."
What?
Yes, just that.
And a moment later, this man appeared, wrapped in the funeral cloths. Jesus told the men to unwrap him, which they did. The sisters were delirious with joy. Lazarus didn't stink. He was alive. Not only that, he said he was hungry.
But was he buried alive? Or how could that happen?
No. One of the crowd, a doctor, was there, and he swore Lazarus was dead. He had tried to help him, and he had seen the corpse. Oh, Lazarus was dead all right.
And now he's alive. It's impossible, but it happened.
But only God can give life.
Yes.
Doesn't that mean that this man, Jesus from Nazareth, is
Go on, say it.
the Messiah? The one chosen by God to lead his people back to him?
We're going to report what we've seen to Caiaphas.
Do you believe in Jesus then, Gamaliel?
I find it hard to do that. People do not rise from the dead, but it's clear that this man is special. Whether he's an impostor or has a devil in him that's doing these miracles, maybe everyone was somehow enchanted.
Or else he is who he apparently says he is, the Son of God. But to say that to Caiaphas, well, I don't think he will welcome this news. And we must be on our way.
They left, and I was alone. What should I do? In the end, I went home again. I knew that Jairus' daughter had been raised to life by this man. I'd heard of other stories of miraculous things happening. I had a bad feeling that it was understating it, that Caiaphas was not going to like what he would hear from Gamaliel, and especially Joseph. Joseph was highly regarded in the Sanhedrin, but if he was a follower of Jesus, then he would be in for a rough time, as I would be. It was a sobering thought. The next morning, I was walking in the city near one of the gates when I heard a crowd of people chanting. What's all this about?
Hail to the king! He comes, riding on a donkey.
What?
Look, it's the rabbi from Nazareth, Jesus. He's coming into the city. His disciples are with him, and the crowd are throwing palm leaves onto their path.
I knew immediately that was what was happening. Jesus was proclaiming his kingship. It was all described by the prophet Zechariah. Behold, O Israel, your king comes to you riding on a donkey. Jesus was making a public statement of who he was. I saw 2 Roman soldiers watching. They looked relaxed and were smiling, probably thought it was just another weird Jewish thing. But Pilate would be sure to hear of this, as would Herod and Caiaphas. Dangerous. Suddenly I felt very frightened. I left the crowd and went home. A sense of foreboding was hanging heavily on me. And it wasn't helped later that night. We had invited for dinner a friend and his wife who ran a stall in the temple.
And that's what he did. He kicked over my table and shouted, "My Father's house is a place of worship and not a market square run by thieves."
Did anyone annoy him before he did that?
No, not at all. We were all just trading as normal. Everything was fine.
Yes, of course. Amram has only the best on the stall.
Of course, Amram. But we all know that you put your prices up when the people come in from the country to buy animals and birds for their sacrifices. And the priests control the prices. If I travelled down from Galilee, for example, I'd be a bit put out, to say the least.
Well, everybody knows how the world of commerce goes. Supply and demand. There's nothing to stop them bringing their own.
Some of these country folk don't seem to understand how the city works.
But of course, Judith, they still have to be inspected by the priests before they can make the sacrifice.
Yes, of course.
And if they don't buy their doves or lambs at a higher price from the official stalls, their offerings will very likely be considered blemished and therefore unusable by the priests.
Well, I can't be held responsible for what the priests do.
And it's not our system anyway.
I'm sure you're both as honest as anyone can be, and I agree. You're not responsible for anyone but yourself. If I thought you were unfair, we'd already be having you both for dinner.
What happened after Jesus had overset the tables?
He'd picked up a small whip from somewhere and started threatening some of us. As far as I can tell, he didn't hit anyone, though.
But the temple guards, where were they?
That's the odd thing. They weren't there.
But they always are.
I know, but just then they weren't. They arrived a few minutes later. Must have been changing shifts or something like that. But Jesus had vanished. Soon everything got back to normal. I doubt if he'll come back. The guards won't want to be caught napping a second time.
Yes, you're right about that, Amram. Have some more of this fresh fruit, and we'll talk of other things.
That night I slept fitfully. Why had Jesus done such a thing? Entering the city in the way the Messiah was prophesied, then stirring it up in the temple. Was it a challenge to the high priest and the Sanhedrin? It was a dangerous thing to do. All of us might have to take sides before this affair finished. I didn't relish that prospect. Would my faith in Jesus withstand it? I fell asleep, still not knowing.
In the story of Nicodemus, the faithful Pharisee, the part of Nicodemus was played by Mark Clanny. Other parts were played by members of the Commission radio drama team. The play was written and produced at Commission Studios in Belfast by Colm Flanagan. Episode 5 is entitled Dangerous Times.